Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our next episode of Quick Bites. This is our webinar series where we delve into sort of hot political issues that are happening in this series around the world. We're hearing from discussing some of that intersection between politics and policy making in different settings. And I'm really delighted that Rasmus Prehn is able to join me today. It's fantastic to have you with us, Rasmus. By way of introduction, Rasmus was the Minister of Food, Agriculture and Fisheries in Denmark between the years of 2020 and 2022, and was really instrumental in trying to move Denmark towards thinking a bit more about plant-based foods and green foods. And we're going to hear all the different language which is used for this in Denmark. Is now the head of Organic Denmark, but we're going to talk about a little bit about your period time when you were in office, Rasmus, and how you took this agenda forward. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody.
Great. Well, let's start with the beginning of this journey, because I think you were a minister when the conversation began. Now, there have been several policy interventions that have happened in Denmark that we've been watching from the UK and just thinking, how have you done all of this? So tell us where it began.
We had a general election in 2019, and that election we actually saw that a lot of young people were very engaged in discussing the climate change, and they really demanded that we should do some political action. And this whole new government, which was a single party social democratic government from 2019 and then until 2022, was a government that really tried to deal with the climate change, and we had a lot of new initiatives. And in the middle of that period, or in 2020, I became the new Minister for Food. Before that, I was the Minister for Development Cooperation, very much engaged in Africa and so on. But I became the new Minister for Food. And at that time, we saw that the experts on dietary guidelines actually came up with this new concept that what you should eat to become more healthy is in many ways exactly the same food you should eat to stay within the planetary boundaries and to take climate change into account and to be responsible when it comes to stop the climate change. So therefore, we launched this the new dietary guidelines in Denmark, saying that if you would like to stay healthy and if you would like to take care of the environment and the climate, then you should eat less meat, and you should eat much more vegetables and a lot of legumes or pulses. And we put that forward. And because we had this alliance between environment, climate, and then health, then we could appeal to a lot of different groups. So what we saw was in many ways that a lot of the young people, they were mainly concerned on environmental issues and climate change, whereas the more mature people or elderly people, they were more concerned on the health issues. And we had an alliance between the organizations working with climate change, environment, and then the patients' organization fighting cancer, fighting diabetes, fighting heart diseases, and they came all along in promoting these new dietary guidelines. And I was the minister responsible for this, and I really put myself in front of this work, saying that we simply have to do this, and it's a way that we could start with ourselves changing something in the right direction, so we could, think about our own health to avoid cancer, diabetes, heart diseases, avoid obesity, and so on. But also we could eat within the planetary boundaries and take care of the climate. And we actually managed to engage a lot of people in that discussion. And because of this election in 2019, it was like all the political parties at that time, in that political period, were aware that they simply they had to deliver on some climate change policy, some environmental policy. And I think this combination was in many ways the driver for making such a great coalition. We actually ended up, with me as minister, to have a coalition in the parliament with more than 90% of the members in parliament backing this new agriculture policy, with all these new plant-based initiatives, with the funds and with the action plan, and also with further promotion of the dietary guidelines. So I think, in short, that is actually the explanation.
That's really so interesting. I just before we get into some of the policies that followed, just to explain. So in the UK, we have dietary guidelines that are produced by the Department of Health. They haven't really been updated yet to factor in our climate targets, which they urgently need to be done. But they don't really have any kind of status, I would say, in policy. They're sort of like, they sit on the government website as this is your dietary guidance, but they don't have any real power in the policy process. So do they have a different status in Denmark, or how did you turn what is potentially, a bit of advice to protect your health into something which was such a powerful political tool? Was there anything particular which enabled that to happen?
I think in many ways, the situation in Denmark was similar to what is happening in the United Kingdom, that the dietary guidelines was something that was only for the experts, and a lot of politicians were a little bit ashamed of them, or was hiding them, because then if you talk about the dietary guidelines, then you have to discuss with people what they should eat, and that's in many ways that's a taboo, because it's very private what you eat, and if your mother had served something for you when you was a child, then nobody should mess with that. That's a right you have as a human being to eat what you like, and nobody should interfere in that. But because of this situation where there was a huge focus on climate change, and also on health, then I sort of dared to bring the dietary guidelines alive, and to invite in different stakeholders. So I could see the potential in having this new alliance between the climate environmental organizations and then the health organizations. And then you could have like the doctors and the experts working together in convincing the Danes that they should eat in another way. And then I also tried to make it alive in inviting in, for instance, very traditional trade unions, for instance, the Unskilled Workers Union, and the chairman, and we had a very fun event where I was visiting. In Denmark, we are very well known to eat hot dogs, and I was in this hot dog store eating a lot of hot dogs, and then this really traditional trade unionist, he came along, and he also would like to have a hot dog, but he then bought a plant-based hot dog. And then, and he was asking me, "Aren't you the guy with the dietary guidelines?" And then we had like a funny conversation, and it was a way to also to tell ordinary people and also ordinary working people that taking into account what you eat and take responsibility for that is actually something that matters. And in a funny way, where he could make fun of me for eating a more traditional hot dog, but he was eating this plant-based one, and he was in many ways the opposite of what many people have expected. And we have this kind of humoristic or joking approach.
Yeah.
And Danes, I think in many ways, like the Brits, we like humor and we like irony and taking the piss out of it. And we try to do that and not to be, too serious. If you are too serious, then a lot of Danes would say, no. We don't want to hear about this. We want to decide ourselves, though. So they like humor and they like, this irony in it.
So was that a setup, that event, or it just happened spontaneously?
No. We made it as a video for social media.
Okay.
And that was actually that was a part of my promotion plan for the diet.
I see.
So instead of having experts telling people to be responsible and all that, then my idea was to bring it alive in a more folksy way, and then with this really traditional trade unionist, and he used to be representing guys who eat a lot of meat and all that, and then he was suddenly the guy who was eating plant-based, and we were making fun of it, and
brilliant.
Yeah, it was quite good fun, and it was also something that really were popular in the social media.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, I mean, in part, what you're telling me is a story about like brave political leadership to kind of see an opening where you've got all this demand for climate action and an opportunity to build a broad coalition of support, and then the braveness that's needed to actually then take it to the public and communicate it effectively and get broad public support as well.
A very important part of this was also I was backed by a lot of young voters who simply demanded action, and they were so sick and tired of politicians who didn't take any responsibility. So they voted for political parties that would like to take action, and they were part of making this agenda. So I was heavily backed by young people, and what we see in the political situation right now, also due to the crisis and the war in Ukraine and the economical situation and the increasing food prices and so on, then we had right now we are facing a setback in many ways. So it would be more difficult today having this transition, and also to see politicians having this who dare to do it, because in the moment it's not as popular as it was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, okay. But let's go back. So you started that work with the dietary guidelines, and then am I right in saying that the Plant-Based Food Fund was a really critical part of the policy process?
Definitely. So we had this broad coalition deciding to have a fund, and we decided to have 115 million euros in this fund. And it might not seem so such a high amount, but it's in Denmark we are only 6 million people, so it's quite a high amount. And actually, half of it, 50%, was earmarked organic plant-based. And in my current position as the managing director of Organic Denmark, was a very important step as well, because going organic is also a way of making a more responsible agriculture, in my point of view, to avoiding chemical fertilizers and so on. And then we had opportunities to apply to this fund and make new initiatives. And then we invited in the NGOs and farmers and businesses and researchers to be part of this board. And then a lot of different initiatives could be funded by this fund. So that was also a locomotive for the transition, no doubt about that. And we have, for instance, we have funded also vocational training of food professionals. So, for instance, people who are working in public kitchens, they should learn to work more with food within the planetary boundaries and to make really delicious food with more legumes, more puzzles, more veganic food, vegetarian food in general. So that is really a driver. And what we have seen is, for instance, we have public kitchens in some of our hospitals, and they are reducing their CO2 emission with 38% in working with this transition. And actually, they have introduced 580% more legumes in the food.
Legumes, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
So legumes was a very important part of the dietary guidelines. And for instance, in one of our local hospitals in a city called Randers in Jutland, they have increased the amount of legumes with 580%. That's a lot.
Wow. Wow.
And it's I invited the Minister of Finance down to this hospital having the lunch, and it was really delicious food. And we have a really strong woman called Mona Karø, and she's the chef, the organizer of the kitchen, and she has transformed the whole food process, and they are totally in line with the dietary guidelines, and they are more than 90% organic. And she explained that going organic is a driver towards more climate responsibility and a more healthy diet, due to the fact that organic meat is more expensive because it's related with much better animal welfare. So you would have a plate with less meat and more vegetables, more legumes, and you can actually have it tasting very good and delicious. And the people are really satisfied with it, and it's a very interesting transition. And that is also because of this fund that there was like vocational training for these food professionals to create these new dishes with new recipes and so on. So and if you can do it in a professional kitchen driven by the local authorities, then you can also inspire private homes, and you can inspire businesses to create food in that way. So we also have private canteens and so on working with these concepts, because they have access to the same training and some of the recipes from the public kitchens.
That's so encouraging, isn't it? Amazing. And I'm particularly delighted to hear about the huge uplift in legumes. We've just launched a big campaign in the UK called Bang in Some Beans, which is all about doubling our beans consumption, and that includes all legumes.
You are very good at beans in the UK, aren't you?
Well, we like our baked beans for sure.
We used to have
We're trying to just broaden the repertoire a little bit. But great to hear that journey's been incredible, it sounds like, for you. Now tell me, in terms of the fund, like how important were the economic arguments? Because I mean, in the UK here, the conversation is basically all about how do we get more economic growth? That is the sort of primary political agenda at the moment. And I'm wondering to what extent you position this as being a growth sector from a sort of economic perspective, and how important were those arguments in terms of the political context?
I think it has been very important, and my good friend, the managing director of the Vegetarian Society, Rune Christoffer Dragsdahl, he's a very clever man, and he decided not to be in opposition to the meat producers. So he was saying this is not a discussion about lowering the amount of meat. This is a discussion about increasing the amount of plant-based food and having a business case out of this. So he was very good at inspiring people to see this new potential of growing more legumes, growing more vegetables, and to create a lot of new businesses out of plant-based foods. And we have seen really interesting cases. For instance, we have a very popular plant-based burger at the moment called Matter, and they are Copenhagen based, but they have this brilliant plant-based burger, and it's actually better than the most of beef burgers. It's really delicious, and some of the very popular burger restaurants in Denmark are serving this Matter burger, and that's a business adventure having this. And we also have other companies, for instance, Organic Plant Protein, which is a Jutland-based company who produce a nice food, plant-based, and so we have inspired people to see this is good business. This is new jobs. This is business adventure in reaching out for a new demand in the future, having more plant-based food.
And have you seen farmers shift from rearing livestock to growing beans or vegetables?
We have seen that. Actually, a part of this whole political transition when I was Minister for Food and Agriculture, we also in that period had the new CAP reform. So within the EU, we were changing the supporting schemes, and we decided from the Danish side to put more focus into supporting plant-based foods. And also we had to live up to the water protection schemes. So we had to lower the amount of nitrogen. And this combination of making it more beneficial to grow legumes and to grow vegetables, and making it more restrictive to have that high amount of livestock because of the water protection regulation. Then there was a political incentive to change from being traditional livestock farmer into become more focused on plant-based food. And we have seen a transition. Not as much as we would like to, but there has been a transition. And right now, actually, last week we decided a follow-up decision on lowering the nitrogen. And I think in that perspective, we will see even more traditional farmers going more into plant-based foods, because it's a better business for them.
Interesting, very interesting. And going back to your point about the burgers and so forth, one of the things which I mean, the plant-based, so the alternative meat sector, I think there's the kind of pulses and legumes and kind of whole, plant-based proteins, and then the kind of more alternative meat sector. And I think in the UK, that sector has suffered quite a bit, I think, through both the cost of living crisis, where those were often priced more expensive than sometimes than meat. But also the conversation that's been going on in the UK about ultra processed food has, I think, also affected that growth of that industry. Has that been a similar picture in Denmark, or has that not been so prominent in the public conversation?
Very much indeed, and as I mentioned before, we see some setbacks due to the fact that the living costs are increasing, and people face difficulties in buying foods and so on, and therefore they go more conservative again. And then parallel with this, we have had this very important and necessary discussion about avoiding ultra processed food. And for some reason, and I'm a little bit frustrated about it, but it has the traditional food producers, the traditional meat producers, has managed to use this discussion about avoiding ultra produced or processed food to making the plant-based meat alternative production the scapegoat, as I see it. So even though a lot of really nice alternatives for meat is of course processed, but not at all ultra processed.
Yeah.
But they have, making that narrative up to fight back this plant-based adventure. So
Yeah.
we really have to find ourselves in this discussion, because there's no doubt that it's not healthy at all to eat too much ultra-processed food. But a lot of really nice alternatives to meat, plant-based alternatives, they are processed, but they are not at all ultra-processed. And we have to declare that and to reveal this story so people can go on buying this. But because of this skepticism, and also unfortunately some of the health organization has been arguing against some of the plant-based processed meals, we have seen a setback. So we really have to be aware in how to deal with this, because of course we should not have more ultra processed, but we should have some processed food as long as it's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, we've done quite a lot of careful analysis actually of the nutritional profiles of some of the meat alternatives, and they're often pretty good actually. So as you say, that it's quite an area where contention can kind of arise, but important to look at the actual facts about the products. Look, we've only got a minute left. Do you have a message to the UK of like what we could give us a kind of hopeful message about how we can learn from what you've done in Denmark?
I'm sure that we can learn from you as well. What I see is that it's really it's about making alliances. It's really about identifying different problems and then use them to solve each other. And actually, I think it was Winston Churchill talking about once that you should insist in looking at the opportunities in the problems rather than the problems in the opportunities. And we have learned that from the UK and from Churchill. so we can do that also in this situation, that we have a situation right now where because of the war in Ukraine and because of the aggression from Russia, we should look into a new way of producing food, and you can actually secure better food security when you go more plant-based. The experiences from the First and the Second World War was that if you should feed the population, you can feed them easily in fewer hectares going plant-based than going with livestock. And also you can avoid the chemical fertilizers imported from Russia. So it's about combining the different arguments and to say we insist of eating within the planetary boundaries, to eat more healthy, but also to be more self-producing and not to import that much from countries that we are not supporting, for instance, Russia.
Rasmus, thank you. Incredibly inspiring to hear you and hear about the leadership that you've shown in Denmark. Thank you for joining me. And thank you to everybody for listening. Please do sign up to the podcast and the newsletter, and look out for the invitation to the next webinar. Thanks, Rasmus. Have a lovely
Really a
evening.
pleasure. Thank you so much.